Hi, good morning. I'm Oliver Gao. I'm the director of Cornell System Engineering Program, and I have been very privileged and honored to talk to our Ezra System Seminar series speakers that we invite to Cornell. So today I'm very delighted to have Mr. Yazdi Bagli, who is actually the Executive Vice President of Information Technology and Enterprise Business Services for Kaiser Foundation Health Incorporated, and also hospitals. Right? In his role, actually, Buckley leads the IT function and the key shared services and operations that drive value and also support Kaiser Permanente's mission to provide high quality and also affordable healthcare. And we all know that healthcare is such an important issue and also somehow a big hole for many nations that are facing. And it's apparently not just medical technology or even having better doctors. It's really a system challenge. And actually, I think Yazdi, you've been applying system thinking and the systems tools in your practice. Actually, not only on some technological issues, but mainly on cross division. I would say the process aspect. So Yazdi, when I was looking at your bio, and I cannot help asking you to tell us more about how your career and how your view evolved, up until today and even into the future, and for you to apply all these powerful system tools to address the key challenges that our society is facing. So, Yazdi, welcome to Cornell.
Thank you, Oliver, and it's a pleasure to be at your beautiful Cornell campus. So thank you for inviting me. So I did my electrical engineering and then my MBA and joined a management consulting firm back in India. And in management consulting, you get different assignments every 3 to 6 months. And in most assignments, you are trying to answer what to change to, and how to cause the change. And I was actually very lucky that early on in my career, the CEO of my management consulting firm, he felt that every consultant needs to understand systems thinking. But at that point in time, we were taught the systems thinking methods in the mid 1990s, and they were interesting, but somehow they did not resonate with me as much. But I was always fascinated by this question of if you go and try to solve problems, you need to have a framework. You can't just solve problems with common sense or past information. You need to have a framework. So I was always looking for what is the best framework for systems thinking. And after working for 4 years as a management consultant, I was really blessed to be hired by Procter & Gamble. And in Procter & Gamble, it's a culture of promote from within. And if you do well in your assignment, every 2 to 3 years you get a better assignment. So every assignment you could look at as a consulting project, and you have to answer very quickly the 3 questions of what to change to, and how to cause the change. So once again, when I was in Procter & Gamble, I was fascinated by, if I need to grow, I need to get a new assignment every 3 years. But what is the framework by which I look at my current assignment and improve whatever is given to me? So if my first assignment was running help desk, my second assignment was running mainframes, I was in IT, and then I was doing SAP projects. So every assignment I looked at as a system and how to improve it. But I still did not have a very good systems thinking framework. I was sort of experimenting. And then in 2010, I was asked by the senior leadership of Procter & Gamble to help them take a study trip to India And at that time in India, there was a lot of big innovations happening. The Tatas
Yes.
had created a $2,000 passenger car,
Yeah.
and
I was aware of that. Actually, we were even thinking about one that imply for greenhouse gas emissions, while it really make it affordable
yes,
towards the lower income.
in fact, the story is that Ratan Tata, I know he's a benefactor of Cornell.
Yeah.
He was sitting in his car on a rainy day, and he saw a family of 4 getting drenched on his scooter, on a two-wheeler.
Uh-huh.
And he said, instead of a two-wheeler, the family should have a cheap enough car so that they can afford it. So we visited a lot of Tata companies. We saw Nano, the car that Tata made for just $2,000. We went to a hospital in Bangalore that had at 1/10 of the rates they had better quality than the Royal Hospital of UK. It's called Nara and Ridalaya in Bangalore. So we visited a lot of these agencies that were doing really good work with much less. And they were talking about systems thinking, and a lot of them were talking about using a framework called theory of constraints. So I picked up on it, and I went to Israel to try and meet the author of Theory of Constraints, Eli Goldratt. And then I had a relationship with the Goldratt Consulting Organization, and I started figuring out that their framework called Theory of Constraints was really the framework that I was looking for systems thinking. And I started applying it in Procter & Gamble, first for projects, then for portfolios, then for processes. And I found that it gave me a lot more effectiveness in the systems that I was looking for. There was a magnifying impact. I figured out that I could look at the system that I was leading, and I could figure out exactly what areas to change instead of trying to change everything. And that was fascinating for me. I left P&G, I joined Walmart to be their shared service leader, and started using theory of constraints for the areas that I had. And then after 3 years in Walmart, I got a chance to work in Kaiser Permanente. Now my job in Kaiser Permanente is quite unique because I'm looking after domains that I don't have domain expertise in. So I have IT, where I have some domain expertise, but I also have supply chain, where I have some domain expertise, but I have construction, I have facilities management, I have revenue cycle management for hospitals. In many of these areas, I don't have domain expertise, but I can easily hire a domain expert who knows the domain, and then work with them with systems thinking framework, and together we can actually improve quality, improve cycle time, reduce cost, drive more value. We can do all of those things. I don't think without systems thinking that would have been possible.
Yes.
So sorry for the very long answer to your question.
No, that's perfect. Actually, that's perfect because I think I would like to pick up from your this very end of kind of you talk about your role now at the KP, Kaiser Permanente, about and you mentioned that you felt that you did not have the domain knowledge, but I believe KP, they're not lacking of domain expert.
No, they are.
However, I think it's really your expertise that, because actually I think for many enterprises, right, given all their traditional operations, they have very good specialized people in their roles doing their work very well. However, I think many, including Cornell, I feel we're lacking people who has a holistic view that can cluster all the different components together, and so that I feel the synergy and the leverage can emerge through that. That's exactly, I feel like kind of your, because otherwise they could easily hire another doctor.
Yeah. So you're right, and that's what I was saying, that there are domain experts, But when you either train the domain experts on systems thinking and then have all of your services following the same framework, then and because also systems thinking goes across domains. So if everyone is following the same language, the same thinking, then synergy happens. So it's not me doing systems thinking and the domain expert doing their domain expertise work.
That's right.
It's sort of a learning. I'm learning the domain, they're learning systems thinking. We put together a framework for every service using systems thinking. And I actually think that especially in healthcare, systems thinking is hugely important because it's such a complicated system, and we all know that in the US it's a very costly system, and people are trying to make each part efficient, and I don't think that is the solution. I think we have to look at it as a system and figuring out what we need to change very soon, and what are the 2 or 3 things that we can change which can provide the most benefit.
I agree, yes. And actually, I think so. Based on what you described about your career, how your career evolved, and I felt that I think you were very lucky. Like ever since you graduated from your undergraduate degree, actually, you said that you started as a management consulting, and you said that your supervisor or your mentor at that time already kind of emphasized for you to have this kind of system thinking, right? And then of course in P&G, and then you said that there was a culture of promotion from within, that kind of every different years, every 3 years, as based on performance. Of course you perform quite well, and then you get elevated project assignment. So which means kind of I feel like you've been cultivated along the way towards the systems thinking, of course, until the point you went to Israel and you picked up the theory of constraints that kind of formed. And even before that, I really appreciate that, yes, you mentioned 3 questions, and I feel that formed the foundation and also the necessity for systems thinking. You talk about kind of what to change, change to what and how, right? I think that's a very fundamental. It's kind of a framework for thinking about using systems. Of course, now I think Yazdi, you mentioned particularly just now. You mentioned that systems thinking and system theory and methods are particularly useful and even critical for healthcare systems. So please tell us more. So what do you see as the key challenges in national or global health systems?
So I think the biggest challenge is fragmentation, right? You have the insurance companies, you have the hospitals, you have the physicians, you have the pharmaceutical company, and usually a system works much simpler if all objectives are aligned. And we are very lucky in Kaiser Permanente because we are a prepaid system. So we have the insurance as well as the hospital and ambulatory operations. So we are a system that has insurance, hospital, ambulatory operations, pharmaceuticals, as well as the physicians, the clinicians.
So you have a full chain.
So we have the full chain. So it should be easier to manage, and that's why I believe that the Kaiser Permanente model is actually quite unique and actually the best model for US, because you can look at the entire end-to-end as one system. But even in a system as like Kaiser Permanente, there are complexities, because one tends to, whenever there are cost pressures, and you know that healthcare has huge cost pressures after COVID. So even in a system like Kaiser Permanente, we are looking for efficiencies. And what that means at times is you take the like work and put it together. Okay, but when you do that and you create shared services, they come under me. I have to be very careful that I don't take any decision in the shared service that can impact the system. So one of the first things that we do in our shared services in Kaiser Permanente is we make sure that the goals of every service are aligned with the goals of Kaiser Permanente. So I'll give you a very trivial example. If managing printers is a shared service for all of Kaiser Permanente, right? There are printers on every floor, 5-6 printers on every floor. And if the shared service leader for that service says, my objective is to save money, just save cost, then one of the knee-jerk reactions would be, okay, instead of 5 printers on every floor, I will put 2 printers on every floor. Okay, yes, you will meet your cost targets, but then if one printer is not working, or if a nurse has to spend time to go to another floor and get her documents printed, that is not the best solution, because the nurse's time is costlier for the company
That's right.
than having extra printers.
Yes.
Okay, so especially in shared services, you have to be very careful that you have a systems view. Similarly, I would say that when you're running a hospital or when you're running ambulatory care, there's a large natural variation in demand. Your ED could be empty today, your emergency department could be empty today, and tomorrow there could be a 4-hour wait. So if you try to make your entire flow and all the pieces of your process very efficient, whenever there is more demand, you'll have to pay more overtime, or you'll have to go get traveling nurses, or you'll have to tell people to go outside the system. All of that is costlier than if you put some buffers at the right place. So it's so important that in healthcare to look at it from a system, because otherwise, because there are cost pressures in healthcare, you will take very subsystem focused decisions, and you will damage the whole system. The cost will actually increase. You will think you're saving money, but actually the system cost increases.
Yes.
And I think in healthcare, absolutely we should be thinking systems end to end.
I agree very much with you. So, so with this, basically you see that actually you use the post-pandemic case. It sounds like kind of like some kind of cost reduction campaign. This reminds me even in post 2008, you remember that whenever you have an economic downturn, right, and all the organizations, including Cornell, right, and I think Cornell hired some manual consulting to help them strategize, and then one common idea is you pool the shared resources together so that you can reduce, but sometimes it does not necessarily work, right? Because particularly you have to be very context aware, and you use a case of I think printers. That's probably easier to address, but sometimes they think about sharing some human capital, but that human capital, human interaction, they need the awareness and the familiarity with the context, with other people. And then when you pour like a human capital in one thing and you reduce, before this human capital are distributed across different departments. Each department has one. Then your 10 department you has 10. Now you reduce to 5. You centralize them, and actually then somehow that context is lost.
Yeah, I totally agree. Whenever you centralize and then you cut, you tend to what I call create a portfolio effect. That means people only work what they think is the most value, right? So the people who don't get their work done, everything slows down for them, and then they will quietly create their own person to do the same work again. So actually what you've done is you've not only slowed down the work, but then the cost also comes back after a while. It's just that you don't see it. So that's the biggest complaint that folks have against shared services. So as a shared service leader, because I've been in IT and shared services for most of my career, I have to be very careful about that. I actually think that when you do a reorganization, you should never do a reorganization for cost purposes. You should do a reorganization and design it in a way that the cycle time of the work reduces. Because if you are able to do that, and if cycle time of the work reduces, things move faster, then total cost will come down.
That's right. That's very important. It's kind of so it's it should be a paradigm shift for reorganization, right? It's mostly people. So I think that's somehow just we mentioned the reorganization, which is apparently a very important system level decision making. So I think your view is basically, my understanding is that reorganization should be done in a more proactive way rather than in a passive way. So I feel like a kind of cost reduction is mostly, like the firms or enterprises, they realize they have to do something due to the cost, and then they think about, and also they want to make changes very fundamentally, and then they go to the organizational level of change. However, as you said, that it's really, so kind of your view is kind of more proactive. It's kind of more pro development rather than being passively responding to some short term.
So in other words, what I would say is if one of my leaders wants to centralize parts of his organization, my question to them would be, show me how the quality of the work will improve and the cycle time will reduce. If those two do not happen, then total costs will not go down. If you're only doing it for cost purposes, then actually you will slow something down, and total cost will increase for the system. So I've tried to simplify systems thinking for shared services.
Yes.
I usually I draw a triangle, and I say quality at the top. On the left side, I have cycle time. And then on the right side, I have cost per unit.
Cost per unit.
And in the middle of the triangle, I have value.
Yes.
Okay. And every shared service, one of the measures is you got to reduce cost. But how you reduce that cost is very important. If you focus on just the cost, then you might take bad system decision. But if you focus on quality, reducing defects, then rework comes out of the system and cost will reduce. If you focus on cycle time reduction, then the process will become frictionless and cost will reduce. So actually, to reduce cost, you should not focus on cost, you should focus on quality and cycle time, and the system does well. And then I spoke earlier about every service needs to have a measure that is aligned with the measure of the whole system. That is the value measure. So even in something like printer management, our measure should be printers always available, because that will make sure that that's the most important measure. Or medical device management, like I'm in charge of medical device management in KP, which is MRI machines and all of that. I mean, cost is less important than making sure there is no downtime, right? So that is sort of systems thinking simplified for shared services to make sure that we make the right decisions.
Yes, I agree with you. I think, as you mentioned, some key thing actually in systems architecting, which is a very important part of system engineering. You mentioned, I really like your triangle, quality, cycle time, and the cost per unit, and then in the middle with value. Actually, value is defined as benefit at cost. Benefit at cost. But and then I said, if they're driven by just cost reduction, sometimes they focus so much on cost reduction they don't realize that it also reduces benefit. So I think it's kind of you should try to probably maximize the benefit versus cost. You want to maximize that ratio instead of just minimizing cost, right? So also you see that. So I'm curious. Apparently, Yazdi, so for practitioners or for operators, focus on one dimension, it's actually simpler. Like if I just focus on cost reduction and I do these things. So my point is that system thinking, while it's really exciting and get you really think more, but did it make your life and your work more challenging?
It's a great question. And it's a great question because it sort of brings to the point that why is it not as popular as it should be, right? It is so common sense that you have to think systems. Why is it not as popular? Why is not everyone saying, let's do systems thinking? Because there is more effort up front. And I think the biggest barrier to systems thinking is that everyone is under too much pressure to move fast. And you tend to think fast instead of thinking slow and deliberately.
Yeah.
So unless there is a very senior leader who says, I want us to follow this, and I want us to use this framework, and if you've not done this thinking, then don't come to me with your suggestions. So unless you have a senior leader who's able to take that and make sure this is the language that everyone follows, it's difficult. And even I've felt sometimes that when I've left an area and someone from outside of my area has taken my role, some of the good work goes away, right? People go back to the old way of working. So I'm always thinking about how do we make this more omnipresent and more relevant. And one of my thoughts I have is it needs to be in a simplified way taught in schools, and it needs to be compulsory for MBA students to have a systems thinking class, because most MBA students will go out and try solving socio-economic or company problems and processes, or will run processes. So this needs to be ingrained from the very beginning. But it is, as you said, it is a mountain to climb at times. And even if at my level, in my organization, which is shared services and IT, I make sure that it is used as much as possible for portfolio decisions, or for projects, or for processes. Sometimes you have to bring the business in. And the business is like, why are you asking me to join a one-day seminar or a one-day workshop on this problem? I know what the answer is. Just do this. And then we have to, discuss with them and make them understand that, no, that's your point of view, and we have to look at the whole system, and we have to look at what are the advantages and disadvantages, and whether the solution that you are driving, is it working on the symptom of the problem or the root cause of the problem? And the best thing about theory of constraints is it draws out a map of the current reality, and we quickly pick out one or two constraints or bottlenecks or problems that if we solve, the system starts behaving in a much better way. So it's not always easy. I was very lucky that when I started using systems thinking in my assignments and my career, I had enough of a circle of influence and control that it worked. And actually, I found that especially in Procter & Gamble, some of my business partners who understood what this was started using it on their own for solving big business problems, not only shared services and IT, but actually how to get a P&G product faster to the shelf.
Yes.
And they made significant improvements in that, which was very gratifying for me to see.
Yes, so basically you radiate.
It radiated.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I think that's wonderful. So Yazdi, I think the more you talk about, we cannot help realizing that systems thinking, system engineering in practice, it sounds to me it's an art of trade-off and compromise. Isn't that? Because you can see that because it's not only you doing trade-off and compromise, actually, you also need to convince all the stakeholders that you are working with, so that they are no longer so myopic. They need to give a little bit, but they can probably gain more down the road.
That's why I grimaced when you said compromise, because one of the things that theory of constraints teaches you is that compromise is bad. But what you were saying was, in order for them to come to the table, you might have to compromise.
Yeah.
But at the end of the systems thinking exercise, everyone wins. That should be the objective.
Yes.
That's what you meant, right?
That's right.
Because one of the things that theory of constraints teaches you is that if you are in the same system, like in a company, your objectives should be aligned. And if your objectives are aligned, then most conflicts are a result of false assumptions, or your context is different than my context, or my measures are different from your measures. And during the systems thinking exercise, we just figure out who's making the false assumption, or whose measures are misaligned, and we should be able to align them. Right? If the objectives are aligned, there should be no conflict. So it's a very liberating process, right?
Yeah, I agree. So yes, I think since you just mentioned theory of constraint, and you give that case, so and you emphasize the objectives within one, the subsystems, the objectives should be aligned. Right. If they're within one system.
Yes.
That's in ideal world. Right, but the work you are working, either it's PNG or now KP, we're always working within a legacy system, which unfortunately, say before you came into this position, there was not much systems thinking, right? So which means that the objectives of the subsystems that were not very well aligned. But so now it's basically you saw this and then what to change, and now it's kind of and change to what? From changing a system where the components are not very well aligned to it will become better aligned. It does not happen overnight. So basically, actually, this kind of lead to my where we can drill it a little bit deeper. Is kind of on the operational level versus on a strategic level. So I think strategic level, you want to change it to the place where all these components, they are very well aligned, they're operating. So for example, you mentioned your experience, when you were in the position and you make some changes that, through your system thinking, the system became better. But then after you left, right, things went back. So somehow that's actually a reflection of, right? So now I want on the operational level, because you are always facing a non-ideal system. The reason I'm asking this because right in our system engineering programs, our master students, our PhD students, they are like people similar to you when you first got this theory of constraints. You feel okay. This is the ideal state you want the system to go. So they're always having this kind of in mind. However, when they get into the real job, they say, "Oh my God, it's actually not." So how do you operational? How do you work things out to apply your system thinking while you are facing a not very well aligned? So that's actually why I feel I mentioned compromise and trade-off, but with good faith, with a good vision towards that. So in operation, how to do that, and also in terms of strategy. And you mentioned one thing is that you've got to have a senior leadership that comes onto the same page with you. So, however, what if not? So you see that if you, for example, when you first come to an organization and you are put in this kind of system management role, how would you approach? So basically, I'm asking a question like an MH student, kind of when you get the new role, and then how do you, you say at a higher level and also at the operational level, how would you operate?
So, in my career, one of the other lucky things or blessed things that I got familiar with was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. So I loved the book, I loved the training, and I became a trainer of 7 Habits.
Oh.
And some of his concepts resonate with me a lot, and I use it a lot when I'm trying to convince people to do systems thinking, especially those who are outside of my circle of control and circle of influence. So the first thing he talks about is that you have a circle of control and a circle of influence, and you got to start from what you control to do your best in systems thinking in what you control, then move towards what you influence. And as you increase your circle of influence, that circle will start increasing. I use that a lot. I don't go into a new role and start saying, hey, you are doing linear thinking, let me teach you systems thinking. No, we sort of start in what you can control and what you can influence. The other thing that Stephen Covey talks about a lot is his habit 3, which is you first have to understand your stakeholders, your customers, and make them feel as if you have understood their problem, as if you were wearing their shoes. And unless you do that, they will not give you the trust and credibility to then understand what you're trying to do. So there's a lot of soft skills that are involved. And at the end of the day, if I'm running a shared service and I'm working with my business, who I consider my internal customer, and if they are convinced that at the end of the day, the shared service will give them better service, better quality, better cycle time, lower cost than what if they had done it themselves, I mean, why would they resist? They should also feel they've not lost control. So you should always feel as if they have a say. It's not like, oh, you've given the work to me, now you do your work, I'll do mine. That doesn't work. So all of those soft skills come into play. And there are some methods where you document what is your service charter, how you will treat them as a customer, how you will have a quarterly business review with them. So we use a lot of that in order to make sure that they understand what you're trying to do. And you have to start in a shared service, do projects to improve that they could never have done it if the work was with the business. So for example, my latest example of that is we have 600 ambulatory offices, primary care, and 40 hospitals in KP. And in all of these, we have IV machines and MRI machines, so medical devices. And my shared service manages them. But if I ask if something goes down, what is the average time to repair? The answer is 30 days. That's a lot.
It is.
Right? Because you have to call up the manufacturer, you have to look for spare parts, you have to call, if you can't repair it yourself, you have to call someone. So what if we created a warehouse where we stocked all the spares, and if something is not working, they just tell us, we ship something that's working. So then the downtime becomes 1 day or 2 days, and then we transport what is not working to a central warehouse where experts are there to repair it. Right? So that's a system solution to a problem. Right? How do I reduce my medical device mean time to repair, and immediately it goes from 30 days to 2 days?
Yes.
That is not something every hospital can do. You can only do it if you have created a shared services.
A system.
So your customers have to see stuff like that we are doing, and then they will say, wow, this is truly helping us, and then they will give you more work.
Yes. So yes, and I think this is really such a nice position. I think you mentioned several times, and also in your bio, portfolio management. I think it's because just that example, you basically right? If you build some warehouse that you can pre-store some parts based on their criticality and also the failure rates, so that you can, so basically in academic research somehow you can think of predictive model control. You predict something and then you right. So for this, but I think the key, as you mentioned, for this model to work is that actually you need to have a large enough portfolio. You have a large enough stock of devices in use, because otherwise if you only have one device in use and if you store this thing, it's going to be too costly for you. But you have these 40 hospitals. So tell us a little bit more about your portfolio based approach.
Yeah, so we have a service catalog for our shared services, which is a list of all of our services that we provide. And each of these services, their job is to improve every year, right? And by improvement, I mean, if I go back to the triangle, improve quality, improve cycle time, improve cost, improve value, improve employee satisfaction, improve compliance, all of that. So a service leader, in my mind, exceeds expectations if he improves all of them, right? So they know that their rating is very clear. They are rated highly if they can improve all of these in a balanced way. So now they have a very clear idea of what they need to do to improve. It's not only to improve costs and meet budgets. Okay, so their ideas, each of my service leader has a team that is constantly looking at improvement ideas. And so they build a portfolio that way. Now, as you suggested, obviously, because of the scale that we have in Kaiser Permanente, it's easier to do some of these things than if you don't have the scale, right? But there are other ways of doing it. So, for example, you could outsource the management of ClinTech to someone who has the scale. So you got to start thinking differently, right?
Yes, out of the box.
Yes. Yeah. So there are ways to break that paradigm if you don't have scale. Of course, it comes with its own disadvantage at times, right? Then you are sort of connected with that third party, and sometimes if they become too big, then they might increase costs for you. So all of that you have to take in mind. So there are pros and cons to everything. But at the end of the day, you're always looking at what is your goal. It should always be aligned with the goal of the overall system. So all of my shared services goals and measures have to be aligned with KP's strategies and measures. And then what is the one thing or two things or three things that you can do that impacts that? That is the way we look at our portfolio.
Yes, I very much agree with you. So yes, I think you mentioned earlier, of course, I guess, either at P&G or at Walmart or at now KP, I think you mentioned that you were probably thinking, you wish that there could be more people thinking and doing things the way that you are doing things. So which means that probably from a workforce development point of view, it would be nice to have more innovator system thinkers and systems engineers trained. So actually this is exactly what the Cornell System Engineering Program is here for, actually in response to all those industry partners' requirements or needs, as I mentioned to you when we were chatting. So now my remaining question is, how can this Cornell System Engineering Program help? That's my question number one. And my question number two is that what should this program be doing in terms, for example, kind of what aspect, what kind of curriculum, what kind of knowledge that you feel that we need to train our students with? So first of all, and as you know, that next week we're going to have the Cornell System Summit. We're going to bring industry, academia, and also government. Cornell, we talk about actually the whole afternoon. It's going to be about workforce development. But now I think yes, based on your different experience from different sectors. So how? So for example, how? So even directly related to Kaiser Permanente, your practice now. Since I mentioned earlier, we have this health system engineering professional degree program. Of course, we're exploring into this area, and I think it's good timing to hear your advice. So basically, how can Cornell Health System Engineering Program help, the healthcare industry and also the sector of medicine?
Yeah. I first of all, I have to look at your curriculum, which I've not yet done, and I'm very interested in doing that because I still consider myself a student of systems thinking. I would actually at some point even consider going back to college and studying more about systems thinking. But my instincts tell me that we have put systems thinking aside as a separate field, whilst it needs to be part and parcel of every major. So I think systems thinking should be taught compulsory, not as an elective, but a compulsory class for every MBA student, and a simplified version of systems thinking even for undergrads. Unless you do that, it will probably only be seen as an esoteric field of thinking or field of study on the side.
Yes.
And I don't know whether any university has done that yet. Have they simplified systems thinking to the level where it can be just made compulsory in every field of study?
So yes, actually, you are right on spot. So actually, not I'm aware of, but what I want to tell you is actually several years ago, in the Cornell Engineering Council, a college engineering council, when they were on campus, as you imagine, the council include academic and also many from any industry leaders. Actually, one of the recommendations I made was to provide system engineering education as a senior undergraduate level course. So I think basically I think you're right on spot. Yes. Good for that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. But we're trying, but we have not we have not successfully figured out a way. The major reason is actually due to probably theory of constraint. The thing is that not in Europe, it's due to the constraint, because all these specialized disciplines like undergrad majors, actually, as you can imagine that what an undergraduate student every semester, what course an undergrad student should be taking either in electrical engineering or in civil engineering, as you can imagine, their curriculum is already fully full. And then now you say that you are talking about compulsory. You want to add something there. So it's probably something like some challenge probably in the real work. It's you want to have this system thinking. However, you have those people, they are in the subsystems that optimizing these things. They say, sorry, no capacity.
But at least in MBA, because
Yes.
the way you should sell this to the students is, if you want to grow in your career, there is no better way to grow in your career than your ability to look at a system and say, what is it that I have to change? What is it that I have to change it to? And how do I cause the change? So it is very, it's imperative for business and professional growth that you understand how to analyze the system. You have to sell it to the students that way, because everyone wants professional growth.
Yeah, and you're actually you're right again, because we have I've been teaching the system in 5300, which is design of highly reliable system and a Six Sigma. This is a very engineering focused course, but every year I had MBA students in my class. They see the
advantage.
Yeah, they see the value of this. Yeah. So another thing is actually, I think, so yes, you mentioned earlier, Kaiser Permanente, you have the advantage of this full chain of healthcare system. You're not only having hospitals, you also have like health insurance and all these. So basically, you've been working across the chain. I agree with you that system thinking is a part of systems engineer. Actually, in addition to systems thinking, there's also systems analysis, simulation, and also system optimization. All those quantitative
Right.
method algorithm we can use. Another view I want to say is that actually systems thinking not only at this full chain, systems thinking should also be, and the practice should also be very important for the subsystems, like for your health insurance sector,
Yeah.
for your hospital sector. So based on your observation, the health systems engineering program we are doing, of course, we want to educate people that can go out, serve the different sectors in the subsystem. So within the healthcare system, so what are some major areas or major sectors or applications do you feel just on top of your mind from your observe?
No, I think it all depends on how you define your system, right? I mean,
Yes.
I would define this my system as Kaiser Permanente, and when I'm looking at a problem I'm solving in a subsystem, I'm looking at the subsystem as a system in relationship to Kaiser Permanente.
Yes.
So you can, I can look at accounts payable as a system. I can look at supply chain as a system. I can look at Kaiser Permanente as a system.
Yes.
So it's all nested, right?
Yes.
We call it fractals,
Yes.
right, in engineering. But I find that it's easier for us because it's one system. If I look at, say, a payer, right, it's going to be more difficult for them because even if they look at their system, they're looking at the margins of their system.
Yes.
They have to really go outside of their system to look at how the providers deal with them, how some of the pharmaceutical companies deal with them. So it gets difficult. I think when we talk about healthcare, everyone immediately goes to hospital flow or ambulatory flow. And I think there are enough people looking at that. In my mind, the back office of healthcare is very uncharted because it's very fragmented. And I think AI, Gen AI, has a huge role to play in smoothening all the processes and making them frictionless in the healthcare industry as a whole. So I think there are just huge opportunities. We always tend to look at the clinician facing part of healthcare,
That's right.
but there is so much cost and defects and rework, right, involved in the back office.
Yeah, the
I mean,
infrastructure.
Yeah, if you're part of an insurance and you get a copay you don't understand and you call, you must have had that experience, right?
Yes.
Calling the call center and sorry, it's not us, it's somewhere else. And then the project manager becomes the patient who has to go to different parties to make sure that everything is smoothened out. I think that area is still untapped, and I think there's a lot of systems thinking and use of new technologies that you can do in that area.
Yes, I think this is this kind of issue and even this key challenge as you mentioned the back office. I think it all falls back to the key challenge that you mentioned early in our conversation, fragmentation, right? Because all these things, and even within hospital, even within the healthcare system, it's very fragmented, such that even a doctor in the ER room doesn't even know all this, how this kind of copay, how this kind of billing is done. Right. Yeah. So I know our time is up. I just want to ask you a final question. What would you say to our system engineering students?
I think most importantly, understand the fundamentals. Enjoy the fundamentals because if you understand and try it out in as small a system as possible,
Yes.
right? Understand some of the systems thinking methods of resolving conflict and try it out at home. Okay.
Yes.
They are very simple, and once you start enjoying the thinking, reading up on some of the best thinkers in the system space, just try using them in your circle of control and circle of influence. I think it will be very empowering, and I think it will be very liberating for your students.
I think that's the best advice. Thank you so much, Yazdi. So thank you for your insights and for your wisdom.
Thank you, Oliver. My pleasure.